And we're live. Woohoo! Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Rebel Roundtable. I am so lucky today because I love support staff, and I especially love bankruptcy support staff. And I'm lucky enough to have Heather Pickett here from Propel Paralegal. And so, Heather, please introduce yourself and let's talk about some virtual staffing of the future.
Hi, thank you, Jen. I am so excited to be here. I'm Heather Pickett. I'm the founder and CEO of Propel Paralegal Services. We provide support nationwide to attorneys, very senior level, seasoned staff for bankruptcy firms, and we now offer other specialized paralegals. And yeah, I'm excited about support staff too.
It's funny because I this is something I rage on and on about is lawyers doing all the things that lawyers shouldn't be doing and they should be using support staff for, and how much it improves profit margin and productivity and all these things. And it's Heather and I tend to think somewhat alike on things because she agrees with that. But what are some of the gaps you see? So you when you launched Propel, what were you seeing out there in the marketplace as far as gaps go?
I think that what I've seen a lot of is firms in rural areas that really don't have access to trained talent,
Yeah,
and they need then they when they need someone, they have to hire someone and train them. They often don't have time to do that. They often can't find the right person. And we've been able to offer very highly skilled, very senior level bankruptcy paralegals to attorneys across the country, regardless of their location. If you're in rural Georgia and your firm is getting busy and you need someone to step in who knows bankruptcy backwards and forwards, that can just jump in and hit the ground running, we can provide that staff.
very cool. And the one thing I've run across, you said something in there that automatically ticked my little box here. I keep running across attorneys who have tried virtual support, but it didn't work. And so now they're like, I'm never going to do this again, or it doesn't work.
Mhm.
And I find that I think your company would turn that around for them.
So we often do now have clients come to us who have tried having a freelancer work with them and it might not have worked out. I think that in any setting, whether you're hiring someone in office or virtually, sometimes it doesn't work out. So you really shouldn't say, I'm just never going to try that again, obviously. But I recently had a new attorney I was onboarding, and during our initial consult and discussion, they had spoken to another attorney that worked with us, and he said he had worked with a freelancer, it had not worked out. He said, I heard with your company, if it doesn't work out with the paralegal, we get a new one. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, yes, that's true. I try to be a great matchmaker, but sometimes things just don't pan out. It may just not be a good fit, or the person, may not have had the right tools or something for that firm to work with them. So sometimes you do need to reassign.
Yeah.
And I've had, several now, a handful of successful reassigns. And so that is an issue that we see as well.
And one of the struggles I've had with some firms, because I often recommend outsourcing and virtual support as a solution, is that they don't have good systems set up to actually do that. And so there's like a 2 or 3 step process sometimes to get them to the point where it would work to have something outsourced. So that's one of the things I often see failing from the beginning.
Yes. So many firms are not prepared to work virtually, and that's okay. It's still new to a lot of people. There are great resources and great tools and great cloud systems out there. And we often do help firms, especially the small solo firms who may not have used, resources such as this before, with who to get in touch with and what sort of things they might need to add to their office.
Okay. That's good because I'm very wary of attorneys like, oh, I tried that, it doesn't work. And then I find out what they tried was like a local server in a garage somewhere that someone's trying to, you know what I mean? It was all duct taped together with, duct tape and tears mostly. So
Yes, the duct tape and tears.
I see that. Um, how so one thing I've noticed over the last few years with virtual support is there's this wide range. There's paralegals, there's virtual assistants, there's all these different things. Can you talk some about what you all do and how that may be different from a typical virtual assistant?
Absolutely. And we do now offer virtual assistants to our clients.
That's
Um,
great. I love to hear that too.
many had the need, so we started offering that late last year. But our main firm work is that we offer highly skilled, very experienced paralegals in the area of law that the attorney is practicing, mainly bankruptcy, as you know, and I'm a big bankruptcy geek, and I know that you are too. But something a lot of people don't understand about bankruptcy is it's not as easy as people believe. It's not just a stack of numbers and forms, and not something that someone could just walk into and start doing, whether you're an attorney, a paralegal, any sort of professional. So I hire paralegals who have 10 years at least of consumer bankruptcy experience. That has to be recent and verifiable. I do speak to every firm they've ever worked for before I hire them.
Good
And
due
ensure
diligence,
that
yes.
yeah, a lot of due diligence, a lot of vetting, just to
Yeah.
ensure that they do have the skill set. And then we do monitor them for the first month or two as well and review their work and things of that nature. But we just hire what I feel like is or and offer a different level
Yeah.
of seniority in support staff. The paralegals really have to be able to do everything soup to nuts, basically, so that the attorney can utilize them in
Yeah.
as much as they want to and need to.
Okay. So you started out as a bankruptcy paralegal service, and I know you've expanded into other areas. What are you seeing as other areas that you're now getting into?
So litigation is a big one. We have a lot of civil litigation work, some estate work, business, real estate. Many of our bankruptcy attorney clients did other areas of law and
Yeah.
they wanted to keep all of their services in one spot. So we wanted to accommodate that need. And sometimes I'll get just a consult out of the blue that's not a bankruptcy firm, and they will be really good friends with a bankruptcy attorney that works with us or that knows of us.
Hmm.
So we also want to accommodate those needs. We are expanding into other areas as needed.
Okay. And what kind of tasks or functions are law firms most successful in outsourcing to virtual support? What are you seeing as the most successful things to outsource?
For bankruptcy, they're doing full service, which means the client communication, the document collection, the petition drafting, often plans included.
Hmm.
Even going through the back and forth with the clients in the review process and the signing appointments, uploading the documents for the trustees,
Okay.
filing, just absolutely, again, anything, any portion of and or all, of course, not appearing in court or giving legal advice or
Right.
any of those things, but anything that the paralegal can do, I have firms using the paralegals to do those things. The really smart ones really use them the
Well,
most.
that's what I mean. So there's, and I'm always harping on this. I'm like, there are very few things that the lawyer has to do in a case other than the legal work itself. But we're
Right.
so trained and so accustomed to doing all these things ourselves and not giving up control that
Mhm.
we make our lives miserable trying to do all those things. And
Yeah,
sometimes
I
we,
think it's difficult. Change is difficult. We all know that.
yeah,
But it sort of got forced upon everyone during the pandemic, and it has really the momentum has continued.
yeah, I agree. I think that's one thing the pandemic did for a good thing was it made remote work and not having an office space acceptable. Because in the legal world, if you didn't have an office space, you were like some fly by night scammer or something like that. And I feel
Right.
like it actually made, not having ridiculous overhead acceptable. You don't have to have a fancy office space in downtown San Francisco to be a good lawyer. So,
Yeah, absolutely. I have more than one attorney client who gave up their office
yeah,
space during
yeah.
the pandemic and just they rent a satellite office as needed, but work from home, which again, very smart. They're saving a ton of overhead and probably
Which was
getting a lot more done around the house.
right. Which was funny to me because I had been working from home since like 2005.
Wow, good for you.
And so I was like, I don't understand why everyone's pushing back on this whole work from home thing. And don't you all have your servers and everything set up so that you can do this anyway? But yeah. We never
No.
had offices for the attorneys. So um, again, saving money. A bankruptcy attorney that was trying to garner a profit did not go bankrupt myself, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the like warning signs that a firm is doing virtual support wrong? Like, what do you see as the mistakes that some firms are making?
I don't know if I would call them mistakes. I think it really takes people, I guess, some time to get their virtual legs under them if they've
Mhm.
never outsourced and they've never used virtual services. But being hesitant or afraid to reach out to your virtual support staff and ask them to do things. Often, a paralegal might tell me after a week or two of working with a firm, they just haven't given them much work. And when I reach out to check in, the attorney will say, well, yeah, I just don't know what all I can do or what I can give to them. And,
Yep.
I tell them the same thing I told them weeks before. You can give them anything you want.
I
So
think
it
they have
sometimes takes
problems
them a while to get
envisioning it
used to it.
sometimes.
Yeah, just to settle in and ease in, but also setting up the right systems using cloud, secure cloud-based systems. We know that there is software that is, desktop, and there is software that is cloud-based. We work with all of those. If it is a desktop, they do offer separate licensing or a remote in, such as a VPN, so that the paralegal can remote into the attorney's server just to do the work.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of options. I think just I think the biggest challenge is usually just getting started, just kind of
Yeah.
breaking that, out of that fear of this isn't something I'm used to, and getting going. I often just encourage attorneys, just try it for a while, try a
Yep.
few cases, see
Yep.
what you think.
And I think some of it too is, again, fear of change. But then I often run into the challenge of it's just quicker for me to do it myself because you have to take the time to sit down and think through things. And if you're a strategic business owner, you should be doing that anyway. But it's not something that lawyers were necessarily trained to do in their own businesses. We think strategically for clients, but not ourselves. And it does take time and it takes effort to go through and figure out what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing. So,
That is such a good point, and I run into that even myself in my business. I used to just do things myself all the time because I thought it was quicker to do it myself. I've really started learning to let my assistant do a lot more things. And I think that hiring really competent people and then trusting them to do the job that you've hired them for is a really smart way to use virtual outsourcing.
and you mentioned rural areas. I see that a lot where everyone's like, well, there's just no one here to hire. And that's a perfect solution then is there's people all over the world that are competent and can do things if you let them do their jobs. So I like that
Yes,
part of it.
absolutely.
Um, I have a weird bankruptcy nerd question that I want to see if you're running into. Um, I saw a case where the attorney got in trouble for they didn't disclose that they were sharing fees with a freelance paralegal. Have
Okay.
you have you run across where okay, I was just curious. It was a weird situation.
I have
So
not, but I've had attorneys have that discussion with me
yeah.
during meetings. So I do know that attorneys are concerned about it. And then of course it's up to them to look at their state's rules and et
Yep.
cetera and choose. So that is what I really tell attorneys. It's obviously not my area of expertise, but I've not seen that case and I would love if you would send it to me.
I will work on that. It was interesting to me because I would never set it up as like sharing fees for a particular case.
Right.
I'm hiring a paralegal as a freelance someone to work on my business, not as particular. So I'm not really sharing fees. It's part of my overhead, I guess, is how I look at
Part
it.
of your staff. Yeah, it is
Yeah.
part of the staff. We do just integrate into your staff. Now, as you know, of course, in retainer and fee, cases with fee apps, the
Yep.
paralegals fees are added. And I do have multiple paralegals that work with attorneys that do those cases, and they do turn in, of course, their own time for the fee apps and put those together for the attorney.
That makes sense. And that's actually a really good service because I'm always
Mhm.
harping to do fee apps in bankruptcy
Yes.
because it tends to be you tend to be underpaid if you're doing a lot of work for a flat fee. In some bankruptcy courts, some are better than others when it comes to reasonable fees.
Yes, no look fees vary greatly across the country.
They do. It just boggles my mind sometimes. I can go from one to it can be like a $10,000 difference between two different areas of the country. So,
Mhm.
but a lot of attorneys don't like to do the fee apps because of the work that goes into having to prepare them. And so that's a perfect thing for a paralegal to work on.
Yeah, that is something a paralegal should be doing, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
I agree. I think that they should be doing a lot of the things. Um, what are some of the best practices that firms should do like the day before they call you? What should they have kind of ready to go on their end?
So something that we've been running into a lot in recent months, it started late last year, but it's becoming more and more regular, is we're getting a lot of bankruptcy firms with backlogs.
Yeah.
They've gotten very backed up and oftentimes far more than they realize.
Mhm.
So I've had several at this point that believe they have a backlog of 20 to 30 cases, but once they really get into it, after we've talked and look, it's far more than that. But really, the day before they talk to me or someone at Propel, they don't really need to do a lot of preparation. I like to just have an organic conversation and find out what their firm needs and what we might could offer to fill gaps.
Mhm.
Most every bankruptcy attorney in the country right now needs a good bankruptcy paralegal with a lot of experience that they don't need to hold their hand or train them on how to prepare a petition or how
Mhm.
to, talk to and interact with and the needs with dealing with debtor clients, things of that nature.
Yeah.
So that is, something that I would suggest is just reach out before you are buried if you can motivate yourself to do that.
I agree with that too, because it's really easy to, when you're slow, because bankruptcy were slow for a few years there. It's really easy to just get caught into that. Oh, I'm just going to do it myself. It's okay. And then when you're slammed, it's too late. Like if you don't have the system set up,
Mhm.
you're just going to keep getting buried in nonsense all day.
Right, right. Once you have backlogged cases and clients that have been sitting for months, as you know, that just means updating things, kind of a lot more time, energy, manpower, and also clients that are often unhappy and need to be handheld a little more and costs more time, energy, et cetera.
Yes, I agree. And the clients who need that, and they're upset clients if they're not getting responses back and they're not seeing things. And then that's where our Yelp and our Google reviews start coming in, or you see things posted in Facebook groups about horrible attorney communication when it's not really the attorney communication that's the problem. It's the firm not having the right support to communicate on cases. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, when we've gotten the firms that have a really large backlog, we assign multiple paralegals to help clear that out.
Mhm.
And then, once that's moving and just going forward with new cases is so much smoother, as you, I'm sure, know.
Yes. It's easier to go forward, but it's hard to go through that the backlog and the setup and that's I think what prevents a lot of us from getting started with it. So
Hmm. It is scary. They are
yeah,
scary. When you get buried, it can be very scary. My advice, don't bury your head in the sand like a debtor client.
that's
Reach
a
out,
really good
find
analogy, by the
resources.
way. Love it. Well,
Like
I
many
always
of them
joke
do.
that attorneys are really good at giving advice to their clients, and they're really bad at following their own advice about things. So I really like that
Yeah.
analogy is burying your head like a debtor client does. So,
Yeah, that's sort of I often talk about the psychology of a debtor client.
yep.
When people say, why won't they cooperate? I'm like, it's not that they're not trying to cooperate. They've had their head buried for emotional reasons often. You need to help them get it out and get moving.
That was one of my questions I had too was do you ever find yourself playing like therapist to overwhelmed lawyers who are trying to figure out how to delegate but don't know how?
I find that I try to offer them solutions, and that often works. I've had that work with some of those, larger backlog firms where I can just continue adding support staff, and luckily, they are trusting me to just let me keep adding staff until we get them in a really good place. So we do have firms now with teams of up to six, I believe, people working with them.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I always say that someone who is stuck in a mindset where nothing is going to work isn't a good client for me because I can't like they need to at least be willing to think that there is a better way to do things before I can start making any changes with the firm. So
Yes. Yeah. And when a firm comes to you for virtual support or to you for support in, I'm sure, structure and processes and workflows, et cetera, they are obviously open if they're
yep,
coming,
yep.
but they might still be resistant to change or just afraid of the change and what that might mean for their firm, for their day-to-day life, for their business. And sometimes it's just hard to get going, just again, like it sometimes is for a debtor client to get going.
Well, and I think the legal business model itself is such an antiquated system that it's been done that way for 100 years or whatever, 200 years, that it's hard to move that chain a little bit along the way. COVID did a little bit for the virtual part of it, but it just is hard to get people into thinking about there's a different way to do things or there's a better way to do things because that's
Oh my gosh, one of the consults I had, an attorney was telling me their process for intake and their consult process with a client the first time.
yep,
And I could not really believe how they were doing it. It was so lengthy and antiquated, as you've said, even, on paper. When I asked why they were doing, I said, can I ask why you're doing it this way? Their answer was, well, I've done it that way for, something like 25 or 30 years.
yeah.
And that was really the answer. I sometimes that blows my mind that people don't understand that they've come up with better ways in the last 20 plus years to do things. And you constantly refine and improve your processes and learn as you go and grow.
Yeah, definitely. I think the firms that are doing that are head and shoulders above other firms. And they also then have a sellable law firm in the future, whereas the ones that are still stuck in 25-year ago processes, there's nowhere for them to go with that firm anymore. So it's hard to
Yeah,
keep staff too. It's hard to have support staff at
it
a firm
is.
that's not technologically updated and things like that. So
It is. It's even challenging to work with those firms virtually. I've gotten that feedback from my own support staff that it is challenging for the same reasons to work virtually with firms that are not as tech forward or open to adding necessary tools and tech.
so all you lawyers out there who are listening and want to know why no one wants to work at your firm, give me a call and let's look at your technology quick
Yeah,
because
look through the tech stack, see where you can help them
yes,
make improvements.
right. That's what, because that's why the complaints I get all the time is like, we can't get good staff. And I'm like, I've looked at your systems. I wouldn't want to work there either. And so that's a good place
Yeah.
to start. What do you think that the future of virtual legal support looks like in the next, 3 to 5 years, like short term?
I think that virtual and remote will continue and continue growing. I think that AI is going to affect, all of it in very positive ways. My anticipation is that it's positive. I just did an AI in the law office panel a couple of days
Yep.
ago,
Oh,
and it is a very lively discussion. Everyone's very interested in how to use it ethically and responsibly. I
mhm.
use it for business, not for legal,
Yep.
but attorneys and law firms can use it for business as well
Yep.
and save themselves time and money. So I think that it's going to continue virtual. I think it's going to become more and more virtual flex. I believe people do work often. People work more productively and effectively if they have the freedom to take their children to the dentist
Yep.
or go to their kids' recital
Yep.
and things of that nature. I think that this train has left the station and it's not stopping.
I agree with that. And I think that employers who don't quite understand that again are going to be left in the dust. And there will be more and more firms like Propel popping up that are on the cutting edge of things instead of trying to adapt to old technology and things like that.
Yes.
Couple last quick questions, and then I'm going to ask you what your Rebel anthem is because I always have to add to my Spotify list. But do you work with all of the typical bankruptcy softwares out there? Do you have paralegals that know all of the different bankruptcy softwares?
We do. We work with all of them. The three major ones, as you know, Jubilee Pro, Best Case, and Next Chapter. And there are even a couple that are on the really older desktop versions that are still kind of hanging around that we have come across. But yeah, we do work with all three of the big bankruptcy software companies and love them.
Yeah, I tell people they all have pros and cons. They all have like things that you need to look for, and if you're switching, make an informed decision about them. But it's always good to have a paralegal that knows the ins and outs of this each one too. So, or the
Yes.
paralegal you're working with should know the system you're working in. So,
Yes.
yeah, very
Yes.
good.
Very important.
How about case management systems? Do your paralegals all work in like Clio and Practice Panther
Mhm.
and Mike, all of those?
Yeah, we use Clio at Propel for everything. So all of our paralegals log their time in Clio, and I have multiple clients, many clients that I know of that do use Clio. We have clients that use My Case, Practice Panther. There's several others that I'm
There's
not
others.
thinking of. A lot of other ones, yeah. Keep,
Yep.
KEAP. I know Infusions, I think is that one. A lot of people use. But no, the paralegals are usually adept at that because they have been using those in firms for years before they come to work with us virtually.
Yep. That makes sense. Very good. Okay. So on the Rebel Roundtable, we always have to add our Rebel anthems from our guests. You have a song that you like to listen to and you need to pump yourself up.
I have so many. I didn't know you, I just have so many, but I do Going the Distance every morning, which is funny, I know.
That's funny.
But
But that,
I feel like if you start your own business and it grows and continues to grow, you need to continue
yep.
being open to growing and going the distance every day over and over for your clients, for your staff, for all of the clients out there that we're trying to help.
Yep. I agree. And there's always room for improvement and looking to see what's next out there too. So
Yeah.
well, thank you, Heather. There were so many topics we could go off on for bankruptcy. We may have to do a bankruptcy nerd discussion someday.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. I'd be
but I
down for a
appreciate
bankruptcy nerd discussion.
that. So, how can people find you? How can attorneys find Propel?
Propelparalegal.com. And you can email info@propelparalegal.com or heather@propelparalegal.com. It's really easy to find us. We're all over social media
You
and the
are.
internet. I believe we're pretty out there. But if you're in the bankruptcy world and you haven't heard of us, I'm sorry. We're here. We're here to help. Reach out.
Sounds good. And I highly encourage you to reach out to Heather and Propel. It was a great
Thank
service.
you.
Well, thank you. And I will see everybody next week on Friday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific, 11 Central.